Good evening, good evening, good evening, and welcome to another episode of It's Okay with Tam Tam. So please, before we get started, share this, like our page on Facebook, It's Okay with Tam Tam. Also, go on and subscribe to our YouTube channel, It's Okay with Tam Tam. Share this while you're out on Facebook or wherever you are. Share this so people can actually hear this. Our topic tonight, we're going to be talking with two teachers about the effects the pandemic has had on our students. So right now we have Mr. Mark Robinson.
Hello, hello.
Hello. And then we have Eric Hale. He will be coming and joining us in just a few minutes. So again, we are talking about the effects of the pandemic has had on our children, our education. This actually came up talking with on one of the other guests after the show. We were talking to Shashu, who's also a teacher down there in Florida. So, and I know with my daughter, even though she's in high school, like it's emotionally has had some effects on her. So, go ahead, introduce yourself. Tell me a little bit about yourself, Mark.
Mark Robinson. I have been teaching now for over 20 years, Broward County Schools.
I'm old.
Currently working at Ramblewood Elementary. I love it there. Amazing school. I've been at several different schools and I've had different experiences as a teacher in Broward. But you know me, I keep my nose to the grind. So I have a lot of experience in a lot of different areas, constantly working. Still do tutoring programs. I have a private aftercare company that I run a summer camp with, and still DJing. So, you know, keeping busy.
So for people that don't know, Broward County Schools is in Florida, is in South Florida. So also a little background history. Me and Mark actually grew up together. I'm from Florida. We've known each other since
before we knew each other.
Yeah, pretty much. Our moms were good friends, and so yeah, we went to known each other in elementary, middle school, high school, around the corner from the house.
Yeah.
And now we old.
We old.
So, being that you had so many years of education, what kind of stuff have you seen? What was it like teaching before the pandemic, before there was even a COVID?
There was a lot more. Well, let me say not a lot more, a lot less concern for the nature of how people interact. Interaction, I think, is a great way for kids to have some sense of connection. Meaning, you know, you're holding hands and high fives, and you're doing different things that allow for some human contact, but more so for just the social awkwardness that comes with being around other people. So that has been minimalized. Like, you know, the nature of how you interact with someone now is very different, just because we do have the concern for spreading germs and, you know, putting yourself at risk for COVID. I know people have lessened the fear of it
Yep.
because we don't have the masks in place as much. You don't see a lot of consistency with how different people control things, whether it's the hand sanitizing or the washing or
That's
the
true.
constant going back and forth. But
Hold on
you
one
know,
second.
yeah,
Hold that thought. Because
sure.
Eric is now on.
All right.
Hey, Eric.
Hello.
Hey, how are
Sorry
you, sir?
about that. I made it.
Is there
Awesome.
any way that you can get the light in front of you instead of behind you? Because it's almost like you got a halo
It's
on.
over you. Yeah, it looks.
Yes, I can. Give me a second. Let me turn that light
Sure.
off.
Not
Okay.
a problem.
All right. So go ahead. What you were saying?
Oh,
now we can't see you at all.
He may have another light. Yeah, you went totally dark on us.
Yeah.
Okay, that's not bad. He's good.
All right.
I think the light from your computer is doing you some justice.
Okay, that's better.
Your other
still
light's
got
coming
you
in
got a
on your
ring,
shot.
but that's all
though.
right. It's still better. Actually, you push the ring back a little bit. There we go. Perfect.
Okay.
You look
Okay.
good.
I'm sorry, Mark. Before he
Go ahead.
continues, I'm gonna introduce. Oh, I like it, Champion Hale. So, Eric is also a teacher. So Mark teaches in Florida. He teaches elementary school, DJs, and has an after-school program that he started. Been teaching for 20 years.
It's amazing.
And so, tell us about yourself, Eric.
I have been teaching for, I believe this is my 11th or 12th year.
Okay.
I teach first and second grade self-contained in Dallas, Texas.
What is exactly is self-contained?
Means I teach everything.
Oh, okay.
So I don't switch or anything like that.
Okay.
Yeah, and just been blessed to do it. I use a lot of music and DJ in my classroom.
Nice.
But I don't get paid for it like you do. So I'm the best DJ across the nation if you're 7 or 8.
There it is. I love it. That's what's up.
Love it.
Yeah, if you're 7 or 8.
Just an added tidbit, because Eric is very humble. Eric is the first African-American male to be awarded Teacher of the Year in the state of Texas, which is very, very significant. Also, I didn't follow up. I'm so sorry. What happened national? I know you got to go to the White House. Oh, I forgot. And you got to go to Cape Canaveral in Florida.
Nice.
And you got to meet the president.
Yeah.
So that, which is all this stuff, is phenomenal. And what happened nationally?
To be honest with you, there was a big movement going on when I got announced. So there hadn't even been a finalist in Texas history to even make it as far. To be the state teacher of Texas, I had to beat 360,000 other teachers that teach in our state. So the year before that, I won the National Urban School Teacher of America. And then to be honest with you, I did not win. I kind of believe that my state went all in on me because I had, did a TED Talk. There had been so much publicity at Washington Post and I was just steamrolling and I was blessed to do so many things. A lot of people kind of expected me to win.
Okay.
And national. They thought I was going to win the whole thing. And I think that some of that is the reason why I got so much support across the aisle from Republican. I got so many letters from congressmen that are Republican, Democrat, Independent, you name it. Texas thought I was going to win. I think it was like a full court press.
Well, I think it's just an honor for you to be there. I think it's great to see, like, growing up, you don't really see African-American male teachers. And so to me, this is significant to have two great African-American teachers sitting on my platform that, that's willing to talk about the education system, because our little African-American boys, our little Black boys don't get to see or get to have someone that educate them that's relate to them. Like, as a Black woman, I mean, I taught high school science for a couple of years, but it's different for a Black male to be with a Black male. It's more relatable. So Thank y'all for being on here.
You're welcome.
So now that we got the introductions going, Mark was talking about, so this is for everybody, for conversation starting, talking about kind of how was it teaching before the pandemic?
Well, like I said, I feel like we came from the age of drinking from the water hose and playing outside and having that sense of camaraderie that comes with community, that comes with the understanding of how you are going to be around other people, which is very different now. One of the arguments that I make with people, not an argument, but a statement that I make is it takes about 30 days for something to become routine. Um, what we go through now is the routine. When people say the new normal, when they say the new anything, this is going to be here to stay. The unfortunate aspect of the nature of how we conduct ourselves has truly changed. And the nature of how I think our children are reacting to it is very much like what we have to conduct ourselves with, even in situations like this. This is a great platform. This is a great way to communicate, but this is what's become consistent with kids and how they communicate now. A lot of things are via the internet or via the phone or via, things that I think once upon a time we probably never thought were going to happen. I think back to Dick Tracy. He had the talking watch, and I thought that was the coolest thing ever. And now you basically can communicate with anybody, around the world almost instantaneously. And the nature of that is one where it is still high tech, high touch, but less touch because of how we have to conduct ourselves. And even as teachers, the debate about, do we wear the mask? Do we not wear the mask? How do we conduct ourselves? When I first started dealing with a hybrid class, which was I had half of my kids at home and half of them in the classroom. Very difficult idea of how you handle things, because you had those same kids that were sitting right in front of you that had homework due, and they were doing it on the computer along with the kids at home. So the relationship that you build with someone online is very different than one that you have where you see a kid every day and you kind of get a sense of what they're dealing with. Whereas you had kids, I had moms, walking through in the background, and they're on the phone doing business, or dads who were sitting over a kid's shoulder and the uncomfortableness of that. I remember thinking to myself how horrified I would be if my mom or dad were ever in the same space where I was trying to learn. That's what these kids have to deal with. And it's the fact that we as teachers, and I'm sure you can relate to this, have to be considerate of the idea that a kid may not be putting forth their best effort, their individual effort, because they have someone at home who's constantly, checking in. I think parents' roles have changed because they now can see kind of what their kids are doing versus what they might have imagined they were doing when they were in a school setting. And it makes it very difficult for us as teachers to gauge what kids are really getting, because that homework might be being done by the big brother or the mom or the dad or whoever. And the cycle that is now, I think, more commonplace is one where we don't know. And testing has really taken a nosedive, considering that we don't know the nature of what kids are really retaining. And that's hard, because we don't want to push kids into a situation where they're going to struggle in the next grade level up. I teach third grade currently, certified K-6. So I've had the joy of knowing that when kids come to me going in from second to third grade, that it's their first exposure to a testing environment. So getting them prepared for that is great. But the downside to it now is I don't necessarily know where a kid is. We do a lot of reading tests and progress monitoring, things of that nature. But now Florida's moving away from the standardized testing, and they're focusing more on that progress monitoring tool, which we don't know what's going to be more beneficial at this point, whether we continue with testing or we go with it, but this is the direction that they're going in. So we have to prepare ourselves in the sense of what is going to be now for a kid to be prepared for the next grade level. And the uncertainty has always been huge, just because not that Florida is one of those states that just doesn't have it together. We are a front runner in a lot of areas, but teachers aren't really well prepared. We're not trained. We're not given the proper understanding as to how we need to conduct ourselves. I'm sure, again, Mr. Hale can relate to this. When we all had to shift over to Canvas or whatever online communication tools there were, all of us were kind of in the dark. So a lot of what we had to learn how to do was, how do I still present this information in a way that is beneficial to the kids? So there was a lot of different things I think that took place when we all had to kind of play catch up with how education was going to move forward. And we're still kind of stuck in that area, because I know Florida also inducted a new reading series, and there's different things that are on their way out starting next year. I know the math is going to change soon. And the concern therein is, where do we now go with all these kids that have been in limbo for the past year and a half, 2 years? So,
yeah. So Eric, how was it before the pandemic for you in the classroom?
For me, I don't know. I was rocking it out. I had really started kind of getting into that level where it was like, I felt like, okay, I'm a master teacher. So once you start to get into that level, you start to have fun, because I knew what I was teaching front and back, and I knew how to push my kids through relationships. And so I had finally figured out, like, if I make my classroom the most magical place, the closest thing to Disneyland that they're ever going to get to, I can teach them anything. So really, I had started getting away from the traditional style of teaching and really kind of had this hybrid of just how I do things, and created this culture of expectation of just being the best. So when my name says Champion Hale, the kids that I serve, they're just is I guess the bravado that they have, they are a reflection of me. So my kids will tell you in a minute, you walk in my classroom, oh, welcome to the home of the champions, and mean it with all they have. And the expectation is greatness. Like, that's just what we do. And so over the years, I've had now kids where it's like, okay, I'm teaching the third kid in the family, and they're excited to be with me.
Right.
So we're killing it. We're killing it. We got, I tell them, my kids, all we have time to do is dance, eat snacks, and score the highest. I don't have any discipline issues. So before the pandemic, knowing what I know now, it was a cakewalk. I was having a great time then, but so much of how I teach is from a community aspect. So there's no opt-out in my classroom. So some of the best teachers that I've run across have been my children. So we do a lot of communal learning, where it's like, okay, I see that I'm not reaching this kid. Well, let me pair him up with 3 or 4 other kids that really learn understanding at a high level. And sometimes it's the teaching that comes from them that gets everybody on the right track. And so what hurt me was losing my kids. I deal with a lot of kids that are in poverty. And sadly, what we've already known is sometimes the people closest to you are the people that hurt you the worst. So during this pandemic, we found out that many of the children that we serve in public education, they live with their predators. So when it was like, okay, school is closed, you started seeing a different side of the children. Well, why is that? Let's be real about it, because they're going home getting touched, whether that be physical abuse, whether that be abuse. Let's put it that way.
Definitely, they reported like abuse for the kids had definitely gone up for kids, and just spousal, just domestic abuse had gone significantly up during the pandemic.
And we're not even talking about the nutritional aspects of many of the children that I serve. Their parents depend on getting those 2 free meals. So like I have parents that, like, they work at Family Dollar. When you go to lunch and you go to Wendy's and you get something and you're like, oh, this person's giving you your food. Many of those are the parents of my children. So they need those 50 hours to pay rent. They really need 60. So when everything was shut down, how are they eating? Well, they knew that, okay, I can always prepare a really good dinner for my children because the school got them for breakfast and got them for lunch. So if I can just make ends meet and keep the bills on, the lights on, and provide a good dinner, we're good. Well, what happens when we took that away? So now we're dealing with children that are traumatized from the trauma that's happening at home. They're traumatized from a physical standpoint because they're malnutrition. They're not getting the oxygen to the brain that they need because the only time that they're safe to play is in my classroom or at recess at the school because all of my kids basically live in the projects. So they live apartment on top of each other and they're not safe. So if you are a good parent, you for sure don't have your child playing in the apartments. And so then we bring them back. They're uncomfortable. Everything is keep your mask on, hand sanitizer, mask, this, that. It's very militaristic now. And so you got to understand many teachers weren't that good before the pandemic. It is what get mad.
He is not lying about that at all.
One of the biggest fallacies of American public school education is thinking that every teacher loves teaching and every teacher is going to treat your child with integrity and every teacher holds themselves accountable to being the best that they can be. Because we have allowed the public school education system to be so underfunded and devalued in the way that we treat teachers, we are now seeing that you get what you pay for. So if you think you're sending your child to school and oh, Stormy, we love you so much. No, let your child act up and be of color.
It's true.
Teachers treat it like a job. Very few teachers have the passion and the love and treat it like it's a calling or have been called to do it. Absolutely. It is a job. They come in, maybe they know their standards. They're going to teach to who gets it. Hopefully you work with your child at home so they get it and they're going to keep it moving. Because it is extremely hard to get fired if you're an educator. You basically got to do something immoral to get fired. I've known teachers that have been mentally retired easily 10 years, easily most of my career.
The burnout has definitely been one that I've taken note of. I mean, I haven't gotten there, but to piggyback on what he's saying, the nature of it is one where you don't have to have all of your stuff together. You don't. You show up, and if it meets the needs of what someone needs to see, that snapshot that they give you, your informals or your formal walkthroughs, whatever different states or counties do, as long as it meets some level of expectation for that administrator to come through and say they're capable. I used to tell people all the time, all you need is a TE to come in and do my job. You read through the TE and you can ultimately teach a child. But there is a nature that goes beyond what suggests the job calls for. It is for some people a calling. It is for some people a higher standard. I go back to my high school days. I suffered hugely from stage fright. When I was in high school, my public speaking teacher, Janet Patonic, I had her for 3 years.
Miss Patonic too.
Yep. I had her for 3 years, changed my life.
She was a wonderful teacher.
Amazing. Still around. I've had an opportunity to speak with her since then. Yeah, she lives right in Coconut. Well, she lives in the area. But that being said, the nature of that was one where she got people to believe outside of their own personal understanding of themselves. She made me into something that I never in 100 years would have expected. And
she was the reason I applied to college.
Yes.
I never even thought about it. She said, "Did you apply to college?"
Right. Oh. She had that sense of understanding that said, I want to see you beyond the years of what you've had me for, and made me fall in love with the art of words and the use of them and how powerful they are. And the difference between calling someone articulate or intelligent or different things that can kind of lowball you was one where she very much stood by the idea of your voice is what presents you to other people. You know, a blind person can hear you. So in terms of how you identify with the nature of your voice, you have to learn how to manipulate it, how to grow it, how to expand your horizons beyond just thinking that you have to, give that weird little speech for 2 minutes in front of a group of people. But that being said, it carries over into the idea of what he mentioned before, the excellence that comes with how kids perceive themselves. Kids don't understand the nature of what it means to have that bravado that he mentioned before.
But you know
It's
what's
not.
crazy?
Uh-huh.
Something that you, well, both of you guys said basically, that anybody can teach. And I remember when I taught for a very short time. I taught high school, and I've had students that come to me that said their parents and other teachers had called them dumb. So now I got to counteract how they feel less than anybody. They're dumb. They just can't do anything. Now I got to fight this to let them know that they're okay, so that they can actually try. Because otherwise, they just shut down.
Right.
Mhm.
And
It's
there's certain
crazy.
languages that we don't allow. I mean, I'm sure again, Mr. Hill can speak to this.
But
There's
that's the
words,
good teachers that don't allow
right?
that.
But there's words that you cannot say in my room.
Right.
Can't.
And
We
that's
don't
how
tell
it
each
was.
other. We don't tell each other to shut up. There's things that are not permissible because I won't say them. I've never told my own two children. I have a 12-year-old and a 7-year-old. Never in my life said those two words together to either of them.
He's 12
Because
already?
yeah, Xavier is almost my height too. But that being said, the expectation was there. When we walked through the lines in the hallways of the school, I've always had what's called arm's distance, meaning your personal space. When somebody gets up in your face, there's that sense of, well, I should be afraid or I should be scared. No, when you identify with someone, eye contact, and again, body, you're spacing. One of the first things I learned, and that came from Miss Botanic. And when I talk to kids about it, it's funny when you watch them line up, and they have to create the space by extending their arm. And the thing that I've told them is the reason why that makes sense to me is you don't want nobody breathing down your neck. You know what it used to be like when we lined up. Somebody was right on your back and right in front of you, and you had that uncomfortability, and you can't touch them, but then they're right there. So the nature of it, why not break the mold of what a kid understands to be personal space? Why not break the mold of what a kid understands to be excellent? And speaking that into existence goes further than just what they're going to do for you when they're with you. Then they're going to carry that over to the next grade level, when they become an adult. It's earth shattering.
Mhm.
But we as educators don't consider the bigger picture sometimes when we try to communicate this, because all we're worrying about is a standard or a benchmark or whatever the flag is that somebody's waving past the finish line at the end of the year. A lot of the substantial knowledge that goes to waste for you got to fit into society. You got to know how to walk around and present yourself. And then
I think that's
also
the
how
big
to
thing
just be.
people miss is that you guys aren't just education, not just teaching ABCs and this is algebra, whatever. You are their mentor, you're their friend, you're pretty much everything to you. First of all, you're spending most of the day with these kids.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're their cheerleader, you're everything. It's not just teaching this and teaching this, and so much emotion that goes through it that when you're in together. And then when the pandemic came and it just kind of broke all that up. And
well, for like he said, for certain people, because rising to the occasion of this whole pandemic was one that was a challenge, but you had a lot of people that went, nope, I can't do this. I can't be
but
on the
it's kind
screen.
of difficult, like, to teach elementary school kids strictly online, especially when you're taking the social aspect out, because of the fact that they're still learning social stuff, social cues. They're still learning how to interact. They're still learning, like you're talking about, personal space. So there's no such thing as personal space on the internet.
That teaching online was horrible. And so even though we've kind of morphed and we know how to do a lot of things online, my kids are in person. We've been in person all year. We were in person most of last year. And then there was a big chunk where we were online. Our children have lost social skills, or better yet, a lot of the kids, at least like me and Mr. Robinson serve, COVID has been almost all of their educational expertise or their experience.
Yep.
And you know what? What's very interesting about it was some of your worst teachers started popping up in news articles and stuff like that because it was right down their alley. They know how to do the PowerPoint, and they know how to do, oh man, Canvas. Oh man, they were all over. I don't got to be around the kids. I don't have to improve their emotional self-esteem. All I can do is hide behind the screen and just do the teaks and come up with some PowerPoints and stuff like that. You started seeing the game change.
Right.
Some of the teachers that you least respected all of a sudden became gurus of online learning. The reason why is their strong suit was just managerial task.
Yep.
They're the teachers. To me, what's worse than the quick burnout is actually the slow simmer. We got folks in education that have taught 20 years, and at least 10 of them, they have been mentally checked out. But everybody needs to eat and everybody needs a job. So in what other profession do you know that you could be average, maybe not even average, and you're guaranteed to get a little 2 to 3% increase every single year? You don't even have to really be average, but that's what we've allowed our profession to be. So to me, the slow simmer folks are worse than the people who get burnt out. At least the people who get burnt out respect the craft enough to be like, you know what, I can't do this. Let me get out and make room for somebody who's passionate, who's going to love these kids, who's going to try to take it to the next level. But majority of the teachers don't. You got teachers that literally are like, you know what? They do the bare minimum and nobody wants to speak about that.
And it serves and is a huge disadvantage to our kids. And the thing is, like, even with like my high schooler, so she went into her high school her freshman year. It was a normal freshman year. So, I mean, that's a big change to go from middle school to high school. It's a normal freshman year. And then she's at a performing arts school. So that's a whole nother issue. And then her sophomore year, she gets halfway through it, pandemic hits. So now she's not at school. Dang near most of her high school years, which, you know, high school, you're still developing socially. You're starting to, drive and you're hanging out with your friends away from your parents. But she had to miss most of that. And so it's a lot of, like we talked about, is like a lot of social stuff that's being missing from the kids. And that's why this actually came up, because I was talking to one of the other guests who was a teacher, and she talked about when we were offline, talking about how the kids that are coming to middle school, but they're still like on the 4th grade level socially. So, or they're coming in, they're 7th graders now, but 6th grade, they were on the pandemic. So, but they're 7th graders now. So even the concept of changing classrooms and all of that and the lockers, like they miss all that. And then just as an occupational therapist, like when the ones that work with kids, we do a lot of social cues, social things, and they a lot of them, especially the younger ones, they miss that and they need that. Yeah. So it's just like so what are y'all doing in the classroom like now, since I guess we're kind of coming out of the pandemic, like Mark said before, like, we're less strict on the sanitizing, less strict on the mask. I think most of the states have kind of lifted the mask mandate. So, because both of you guys seem to be very kind of passionate and kind of are doing more than just this is A, this is B, put them together, make a word. What are you guys doing to kind of try to, I guess, counteract the effects that's happened to your students?
Well, to be perfectly honest, it's the sense of rebuilding their idea of what school is. When I say rebuilding, it's simply put that a lot of these kids, again, have become accustomed to the comforts of, I'm sitting in the living room and, I can be here, but then there's 100 things going on over here. It's redirecting their focus. It is reconstituting the idea that there's something better than what they may realize right in front of them. That relates to, again, the social cues that have been absent, the inconsistency of knowing that they can be bigger and better and more open to the world than just what they can have exposure to when they search it or when someone tells them to search it. We have to
Now,
identify.
are your kids all in the classroom 100% now?
Yes.
Okay.
I have 18 students right now, but it fluctuated because the school that I'm at is near a lot of charter schools, private schools. So these parents sit on the waiting list, and the second that their kid gets accepted, they snatch them out, which is another injustice in some ways, because some of these kids I had for months, and to kind of pull them out. I understand the nature of things. People have to move, or their job becomes something that's transient. But again, kids have that sense of not being consistent with what a goal that's set for them can be. And it's getting them to understand, I want you to be ready for fourth grade, but I want you to be ready for the world. And I've never changed that. I think the bigger part of what it means to be an educator is there's a level of consistency that goes beyond what I do right now. Meaning the kids that I had before, they'll be, oh yeah, I remember when Mr. Robinson did this. And the kids that I have now can also relate to it because they remember, yes, those were the core values that Mr. Robinson presented. Those are the core values that Mr. Hale has always had. You do have that sense of legacy. And I think that's what comes up short for a lot of people who just show up and make it a job. I can't say that I have a long list of students that I had previously that are now coming back to me, but there's that waiting list that's coming up for next year. Oh, I heard about Mr. Robinson. Is there any way possible that I can have my second grader ready for his class? That's more of a compliment than I think that anybody would be able to ask for, just because, again, someone that doesn't even know me has an expectation of me already for their child, for whatever they may know about me from hearing from other people. So the nature of it for me is just rebuilding that sense of readiness, because I think that's what we don't do all the time. We don't get these kids ready for the bigger picture. It's not just the next grade level up for me. It's what you're going to bring to the table for, the rest of your elementary experience, then middle school, then high school, and then, you fitting into society.
Yeah.
For me, people who are already living on a razor's edge will take advantage of the situation. So for me, a lot of it is I haven't been able to hold my parents accountable for their children's learning because they've been out of reach. So, before the pandemic, I would have a meet the parent night on my own where I would literally teach the parents how I'm teaching their children. So we were all on the same page. This is how we do addition in my class, subtraction. This is how we read. This is how you read a story to your child. These are the comprehension questions that I need you to hit. When you're talking to your child, you need to be doing this at home. So I don't believe in homework for first and second graders. I do believe in routines. Give me 40 minutes of homework Monday through Thursday. Do exactly what I tell you, and I promise you, your child will be successful. Mm-hmm. And not only that, I'm going to buy the resources for you because I know you don't got it. So now there's no there's no reason why. There's no excuses. And so I'm tough on my parents. It's a shared vision of success, a partnership between me, the parents, and the children. And there's a lot of parents that fight that initially. Yeah, but there's no way but the right way.
There's a lot of parents.
And then once again, self-fulfilling prophecy, and then we become the best because that's just what we do. But now some of your parents that maybe are lazier or don't feel like they don't have the time or have more excuses. Well, because of the pandemic, they've been ducking and dodging and hiding. So now there's that disconnect. So now you got kids that have been allowed to treat school like it's babysitting. There's two things Mr. Hill will never be. And I'll tell my parents, Mr. Hill is not your child's friend. Because if you've ever taught little kids, you don't want to be, that's one of the biggest mistakes that new teachers make, being your student's friend. I'll be your advocate. I'll be your father figure. I'll be a lot of things. But if you ever watch little kids, a little kid in 3rd grade will cut their classmates' hair off, smooth off, and then think it's going to be cool later. So you can't get caught up in that. I'm not your friend. And whoo, I am not your child's babysitter. And so I'm doing battles with my parents because it's been like a free fall because of the pandemic. Oh, we can't get in contact. So it's like, it's been a lot of surviving and my mindset is thriving. So it's been hard for me to adjust, and I refuse to adjust to just the survival thing. Like, nah, we still got aspirations. We still got goals to meet. And I don't care if my kids aren't doing what they normally do. They still going to do better than everybody else's.
Mm-hmm.
But it's crazy that I have heard that from several parents before. Like, I send them to school. That's your job. That ain't my job.
Well, the fallacy of that is very much what he said. It's the nature of the parent.
Yeah,
why are you in my business? Why you got to be? It's not about me being in your business. I didn't go and pick your child's name out of a hat and say, "Oh, look, I show up to work. They tell me who I have to teach, regardless of the language barrier." I have 2 students from Brazil who speak Portuguese. I have another little girl from Mexico who speaks Spanish. I got a phone that speaks 76 languages. What's my excuse? What's your child's excuse for the sake of what that barrier is outside of what I'm going to do to make sure that I come to the table prepared? Your child comes to the table prepared. Well, guess who else has a seat at the table? You do.
Yeah. So we got a question. I don't know if you guys saw it. I'm gonna put it
I
up.
did.
So Karen, she wants to know, she has grandkids that are in school. What are the suggestions that she can do to help her kids get caught up and regain focus? Because I've heard where kids, I've seen them where the kids were out during the pandemic. They were out working, like elementary school kids out working with their parents.
Right.
So, but she's asking, like, what are suggestions that will help the parents?
Well,
so
you have and this is me speaking for the promotion of what is accessible online. And I'm not saying that for the sake of what I would just tell you, go to this website and let your kid play. More than I would say that if you have access to anything that allows for your child to have that extracurricular extension, make use of those. Find out what they are, especially the stuff that's for free. I always push Math Playground. It's a place where kids can go and they can practice math from, I believe it's K to 8th grade.
Would you say Math Playground?
Mathplayground.com. I stand by that site for a long time. It's a great place to go. I've gone there with parents and shown them. They have access to videos that explain different concepts, because you have to remember, 3rd grade is when we introduce a lot of concepts that I didn't start hearing until I was in high school, meaning your algebras, your geometries. The philosophy of our education system now is throw it at the kids and see what sticks, as opposed to it being what it was when I was in school and I came out of Broward schools, which it's not a broken system, but it wasn't a system that needed repair, because when we got to 5th grade, all the expectation was for us was fractions. You knew your fractions. You had a good understanding of what a half, a quarter was, an eighth, and you knew how to move those fractions around. And that's where it stopped. When you got to middle school, they introduced different concepts with the decimals and with pre-algebra. But you're exposing these kids to that stuff at a very early age, thinking that it's doing more good than it actually is in some instances. Doesn't mean that kids that get it shouldn't be exposed to it, but the nature of it is one where it's sometimes an overkill. And I get away from that with a lot of my parents. Well, I saw their scores, or, we took this diagnostic test and they did horribly, because some of this stuff we haven't We haven't taught yet. We haven't gotten there. So if you're going to now look at your kid and go, well, they can add, subtract, multiply, and divide, but they can't do this. No, they can't. And not for anything outside of the fact that there's going to be that need for you to go beyond what I show you from time to time. But also, like what he said, this is how I teach certain things in my classroom. When you adopt that same understanding,
Yes, Karen.
yes, Broward County Schools for myself. But when you adopt that understanding, it's a sense of knowing that you are going to now mirror what the teacher is doing. It may not be in every aspect because, again, I look at myself as a professional. Not every teacher who does this job is a professional, but I don't knock the people that show up every day because at the end of the day, it is not a profession that is one where you just take it off at the end of the day. If you truly enjoy what you do, it's a passion for you, a love, whatever, then there are those times where you're going to dedicate your home hours to preparing and planning and even having those uncomfortable conversations with parents. I've gotten messages 10 o'clock at night from, a mom and dad who are like, hey, here's what's going on. Okay, let me set your mind at ease. Here's what you can do. So like I said, the online aspect is one thing, but also I think if it's a matter of communicating with that teacher and saying, what can I do? Or what do you use? Or what makes sense for me to try to do at home? Some of our parents are not at an algebra level. They're not at a geometry level. They're not even at a basic math level. You still go to a grocery store and hand somebody $5 with a quarter after the amount is, $2.12. And that throws them off because they don't know how to do the math to say, here's your change back. That machine that pops quarters and dimes and nickels out of it, if it's broken, that throws some people off. One of the first things that I had to learn when I worked for Walt Disney World, they taught us how to count back money. And if you couldn't do that, they sent you right back home. And you have to understand the nature of that. There's so many basic ideas of mathematics alone. And I'm big on math, but reading is the other component, meaning if you can't read, there's a lot of stuff you cannot do. So it's instituting that understanding of the need to hear what good reading sounds like, to hear what good speaking sounds like, to know that you can maturate the things that children watch to the things that children read. They go hand in hand, but we don't always look at it from that standpoint because we're quick to want to give your kid a tablet. But I grew up on G.I. Joe, and at the end of G.I. Joe, they told you a message. Where a lot of this stuff now is just make it up as you go and hope that a kid can appreciate the value of it. And to me, there's a lot of stuff that's not valuable anymore. So whatever comes from me, ultimately, I want to share my experiences that I had as a kid, but also relate to children that, well, here's how they want you to do it now, but here's another way that might be easier. So also giving kids that sense of there's lots of different ways to get to the same ending. Don't feel afraid to expose your kids to the things that you learned and how you were taught. It's different, but it's all means to an end for the sake of what a kid may get. Not everything is going to make sense right away, but something that you might share with a child, not necessarily a trick or a way around it, but giving that sense of, do you know why you borrow? Do you know why you do this thing when you do it, when you add or subtract, multiply, divide, whatever it is, or when you're reading? Giving a kid an understanding of that makes it easier for them to relate to what they're looking at, whether it's math, reading, science, social studies. That nature of thinking has been lost on us trying to, again, prep these kids for a test, knowing how to attack a question as opposed to, you're going to be doing this the rest of your life in some way, shape, or form. So making note of those different kinds of things definitely will improve focus, but it'll also improve your general take on what you should do for your child. So that's just one website. I can, if you want, Tamara, I can leave you a list of different things that I think ultimately will help. But like I said, we don't always have the exposure with different people face to face. So it's definitely good to utilize all the different tools that you have access to.
Yeah, send it to me. I'll add it to the comments.
Sure.
Go ahead, Eric.
If you have the finances to do it, as far as reading, I am big on reading, and there are great little leveled readers that you can buy for under $20 that'll give you like 20 books, little comic book ones, and it even has the levels where your child is. You can ask your teacher, where's the level that my child needs to be at entering this upcoming year. You got to think of it like sports. You hear all the time people make comments. This person has great court awareness. They might not be the most skilled player, but they have great court awareness. So they're able to figure it out. That's what you need for your children. When summer starts, especially because of the pandemic, you have got to keep them engaged in learning some form or fashion. Comic books are great. Get on YouTube. My God, if as good as I was in sports, if I had a tool like YouTube where I could learn how to do any type of technique directly from professional athletes, you can learn how to do almost anything by hand for free because of YouTube. There's so many great learning activities that are literally, I even have created a YouTube channel because the summer before last, when COVID hit so strong, I decided I was going to loop with my kids. I had a great relationship with those kids and I didn't want them to get lost in the sauce. So I dedicated that summer to work with my kids. I got them free tutoring through a nonprofit tutoring. I bought them things and we learned all summer long. Did it go perfect? No, but they kept tools. And another thing, when you're working with your kids, and I use this in my classroom, less is more.
Yeah.
It is, to me, I'd rather do 10 mid to high level problems where we think deeply and learn how to solve real world problems and learn how to think over 30, 40, 50 problems a day. And that's what you see so many teachers do. They just, the standards say this, more. No.
And we
want my children to know how to just be average and do a ton of stuff.
Yep.
Always be the person that's overworked doing the low thinking level jobs. Nah. I want my children to be the high level thinkers that are leading projects, $1 million projects. And to do that, you got to allow them time to think and to fail. We have got to be from that because the standards, we got to go. We got to hit this one. We got to hit this one. We got to hit this one. We got to go. I have rejected that for most of my career and I've been successful. I'm a big on less is more. I want to do a rigorous problem that starts off a little bit more than what the expectation is and allow my kids to work together and actually think. And what's so crazy is we spend so much time as teachers trying to get our kids to think, but for the life of me, most of the teachers that I come across are worker bees. They know how to do what they are told. If you challenge them to solve a problem, even if you gave them the finances to do that, many schools don't have the capacity or the leadership to do that.
You know what's crazy is when I taught, like I say, I taught high school science. And one of the reasons I got out was, I tell people, I said, I guess I was a OT by nature. But one of the reasons I got out was because I was told by the principal and the assistant principal, you need to have them read and take a test. And you need to get them ready for the Sunshine State Standards. I think that's what it was called at that time. And I said, these kids, that's not how these kids function. Now, first of all, I got half my kids on probation for something stupid that they did. I said, if I come up here and I go in the classroom and I just read or have them read, which some of them got skipped over that had some learning disabilities. And if I just had them read and take a test, I would get nowhere. So it's being a teacher is putting on a show. You got to get their attention. And so I said, my goal is for them to think. They said, oh, well, you need to teach them technology. Granted, this was 15 years ago, but I said, no, I said, by the time I open up a manual or some technology, these students will have already figured it out. That's not what they need. I said, they need to learn how to think and problem solve in their head and not giving them the direction. So I got in trouble because we would be out in the parking lot. They had to build cars and race them, and build a car and race it. So they had to think about the weight and put the motor together and how is it going to stay straight. Then we had to recreate the ocean floor. Like, we had projects that made them think and put pieces together, and they had to present. But I got in trouble for that because they wanted me, as Mark had talked about before, some people that just want them to pass the test. Mm-hmm. And I said, if you teach them how to think, they will naturally pass the test. Mm-hmm. You just got to let them think. I said, because when they go to college, this what they're going to have to do is they're going to have to think and process information, but they're not going to have all the professor's tests. So you've made
that's what it goes back into, meaning the process of analyzing, the process of composing, the process of words that have a lot more depth in terms of what you have to do to show that you can do it. There's different taxonomies and things that we profess to as educators, but we get away from the idea that the need for that goes deeper than what really exists in the world. Kids don't need us in the sense of they can go out and find all of these things because they have the internet at their fingertips. We had encyclopedias, we had people who are knowledgeable, we had different things that ultimately spoke to the need for us to find knowledge. You don't have to find it anymore. You can literally pick it up and use it for what it is for the moment. But we don't give kids that sense of lifelong learning. I'm 43 years old and I still look at certain things that I learn in a day or in a month, in a year, and go, okay, now I need to take this and bring it to the table for people who are coming up behind me. We're quick to say, I want to be grown. Well, grown people don't go looking for other people to necessarily jump in all the time. Grown people know how to handle things on their own, and teaching a child the difference between, well, I got my phone, I got my nails did, I paid some bills, or I got a baby daddy, a baby mom. People associate that with being grown. No, sweetheart. No, sir. You're going to elevate your thinking beyond that when you start to realize that there's people out there that put way less time, energy, and attention on those things. And focus on what they're doing to edify themselves. I'm a small business owner for the sake of what I do with my music and different aspects that I'm learning from having that. But we don't invest that same thinking in our kids because we're so quick to say, well, the concern is paying a bill. The concern is, getting to the end of the day and having something to eat. The things that he mentioned before that walking that razor edge for the parents. So then the kids are walking along that same edge when they get to that level in their lives, instead of going, well, let me learn more about what it means to play the stock market, to do something where when I get to a certain age, I have to think less financially, or having those financial conversations, or having that understanding of how to let money work for you instead of you working for it all the time. I heard the first time I heard the word investment, I was watching Rap City on BET. I believe it was LL Cool J. He got right in the camera. He's like, all right, I'm about to teach y'all a word, and I need y'all to remember. And the crazy thing was, here are my parents, and no disrespect to them. My parents did an amazing job with me, my sister, and my brothers. But those conversations are not happening in a lot of homes because it's just, again, the food stamps, or the things that, again, kids get to see because their parents are going through that level of struggle, whatever it is. But when you start to introduce those money concepts, those home economic concepts, those family constructs, the things that, again, some of us may have had to some degree, but wasn't elevated because, again, the exposure wasn't there, or somebody didn't pull them aside and say, well, here's something you could do. When you have so many different entrepreneurs and people who have a good sense of themselves that really could get these kids to think differently. If somebody had grabbed me at 19 or 20 and said, take a couple of those checks that you made working at Albertsons and do this with it. I'm not saying that I'm struggling, but I still work 4 jobs. I'd love to put 1 or 2 of them aside and be able to focus more energy on the things that I want to see myself do. But it doesn't take away from the fact that, like I said, we started pulling those things out of school like almost immediately. We don't have the home ec. We don't have the shop classes and different things. You can go to a Votech school for it, but once upon a time, it was an integral part of what we did as educators. And that's why I said you get away from the idea of these people that actually knew their stuff, as opposed to all these different things that have been created to make it easier for us. And the ease of use now is much greater, but we have so much common sense that's lacking, so much less of an attention to detail, where the thinking has gone completely out the window because, hey, Google, can you? And then there it is. So it's a matter of getting that to change. I don't know the greater good of it all for all the different people that might be listening or whatever the case may be. But if Mr. Hale was the first in the state to have such an honor, it speaks to the nature of our society. And it's sad in a way, but I'm glad now that we're bringing it to people's attention, because the need for education to be more paramount. You go to other countries, they're scratching math problems in the dirt. They're still using chalk and different things, where our kids have so much stuff, but so little sense of its importance, of its strength. And I think until we give more credit to the field of education, we're going to continue to see this huge gap in terms of the worldview. Kids really don't get it. You go outside of this country, and there's so many other things that are paramount, that are important. I won't knock sports. I won't knock music or the arts. I still feel there's a great need for those things, but we have to put a more pronounced level of concern into education, like the thinking part, the processing, the things that, again, make a kid want to go into something besides the things that they're constantly seeing and thinking, well, I might have an opportunity to be this. You're not going to be the 1 or 2% in the world unless you're thinking on a different level. So
I think a couple of the biggest skills that get glossed over, that set a kid up positive for life. When I say learning how to think, you would be amazed at how hard the concept of making a good inference is, of making a good prediction, and how that one skill sets up your life.
Yep.
Or can save your life. We have kids that have technology at their fingertips, and they know so much more than we ever knew. And at the same time,
don't know nothing.
So much less.
Don't know a thing. You're right.
Because the skill of being able to take information that's gathered from a text or gathered orally from a conversation and being able to read between the lines is a skill that has to be taught. It's a skill that has to be allowed to marinate with the kids. It's a skill that has to be readdressed over and over and over again. Understanding that so much of education is even body language. Even them understanding. A lot of kids don't even understand when they're in a dangerous situation because they have no concept of picking up on social cues. So you have so many kids that get caught up at the wrong place at the wrong time situations, or trying something that they shouldn't have tried. And a lot of that goes back to really teaching kids how to understand cause and effect. And those are skills that need to be readdressed constantly.
Right.
Constantly.
Agreed.
Getting kids to understand scenarios and situations. When I can teach a kid to think, I could take a kid who understands that and I could teach him anything. It's like seeing the chessboard. When you say like people who play chess and they're like, oh man, they see the chessboard. I've been blessed to teach some kids that I'm like, man, you have been blessed with the skill to be able to put it together. I got kids that are so street smart, and once I tweak it, I could throw out some marbles, some gum, and something, and say create something, and they can almost create an award-winning something because they can figure it out. Mm-hmm. And then allowing them the opportunity to be able to speak and verbally hold them accountable for their reasonings. Mm-hmm. That's something else that so many teachers have taken out the classroom. Yep. I want my kids to challenge me. I want my kids to get to a level where they can say, Mr. Hill, I have mastered how you taught it, but I've been doing my own discovery and I can come to that same conclusion by doing it this way. Oh, really? Show me. And then sometimes their way might be more efficient and better than the way that I've been teaching the kids.
Very true.
Every year I'm focused on how do I make the learning funner and more efficient. Why does it have to be efficient? Because I'm dealing and teaching kids who are living in poverty and in trauma, and they're bombarded by so much negativity that I got to make the positivity as bright and as attractive and as streamlined as possible so these kids can grow up and be successful. And so, yeah, that's my take on that.
Well, fellas, we have been on for a little over an hour. I try to keep it at an hour. So we're about to close it out. But before we go, want you to guys tell me if you can change anything about the education system, situation, or just one thing. And I know it's a lot of stuff can be changed, but one thing that could change, that you can change, or somebody can change that can be changed. So I want you to say that. Let me know what that is, and then kind of tell me what you do on the side, so everybody can hear what you do on the side. So whoever wants to go first.
Okay. The accountability. I think it's something that can be shifted. A lot of the focus or the magnification goes into what we do, as opposed to what other people may or may not be doing. How we shift it is simple. Conversations like this, making parents feel more comfortable in their own skin, knowing that you have the shared responsibility of the growth of our children, but also knowing that it's not something that's easy, and knowing that we ultimately can come together in a safe space and build, and not feel as though there's an attack or there's a concern with what you struggle with, be it your education, be it your finances, be it your status in society. If we can somehow put a stronger hold on the idea that being held accountable doesn't mean someone is trying to catch you at something that you're doing wrong. We're just trying to understand the nature of your position and know how we can be of assistance. You know, the one word that Mr. Hale used a lot is serve. We service children. We service our communities. We're not just servants in the classroom, but in also other levels of thinking. So I think if we can somehow shift the balance of accountability off of, you know, how much stuff I'm not doing. I'm not limited to what I'm capable of, but there's 24 hours in a day. And of those 24 hours, there's a small frame of time that I have to make the education efficient, to make it funner, to make it something a kid wants to be a part of. So I think if there is anything that I would want to see change, it would be that. And as far as anything I do on the side, I am one of the operators of Raw DJs. I've been a DJ now for over 18 years. Teacher now for 23 years, and I love sharing private experiences with families, with their parties, their weddings, any kind of event where music becomes part of the focus. And myself, my friend Carlos, and my other friend Franklin, I started off with Will. The four of us have been doing music in Broward for over 20 years collectively. And I love the idea of incorporating music in my education. And in most aspects of my life, most people see me, I got my headphones on, my hat normally is on. So I know probably people are like, where's his hat at? But all that being said, thank you, Tamara, for having me on for this.
No problem. But the crazy part is Mark DJ'd my baby shower when I was pregnant with Brianna. Hale DJ'd my baby shower for the baby I just had. It's crazy.
That's crazy.
All right. Eric, what was the one thing you would change?
Compensation in public school education. You keep hearing about self-care for educators, but there's no relaxation without compensation. And so it's so disingenuous when people outside of the arena of education keep talking about what teachers need, and you need to take time for yourself, and you need to go get a massage. And when I went and met the president, the Secretary of Education said something like that. And so I immediately put my hand up and I said, let's take a poll. I said, how many teachers in here? It was the best, supposedly the best 100 teachers, because they took the class of 2021 state winners and the class of 2020, and we were all there together. So that's about 100 teachers from every state in America and the Providences and Guam and everything else. And I said, how many of you can actually afford a manicure and a pedicure right now if you wanted to, based off of your salary? And so maybe 20 people raise their hand. And so compensation of teachers has to go up. You get what you pay for. And we don't pay teachers enough to do what Mr. Robinson does out of the kindness of his heart, to do what I do based off of the strength of God and people praying for me. I have learned that there are very, very, very few teachers like me across the nation. And so compensation, you show me how much you care about me and my profession by how much you pay me. I've won enough awards. I got enough gold trophies. I've got enough attaboys. I got enough things from congressmen, police chiefs, you name it. I would have rather have had $100 gift card. Just to be honest with you.
It's the truth. He's not lying.
And so that is where we need to go. And he says something that I live by. I call it the 3 A's. And so it's first advocacy, next it's accountability, and lastly it's action. We need to advocate for all kids, regardless of their color, regardless of their social standing, economic standing, right? Next, we got to hold everybody accountable, from the White House to your house. Everybody needs to be held accountable to the success of these children, because these children are the future, and they're the future of America. Lastly, it's action. There needs to be actionable steps put in place for us to get better in education. Don't tell me, oh, we want to help teachers, and then I say, okay, well, across the board, teachers need a $10,000 wage increase nationwide from where they are right now. And then you don't got nothing to say. Then we just talking. We need more action in education and less talking. So that's it.
Amen to that.
Strong words. I agree with that, with everything you guys said, especially compensation, because I've heard somebody was not in education saying, oh, they get paid enough, but we know that's not true. So I want to thank you both for being on. Thank you for all the work that you do. Also, I want to thank for all the other teachers that are out there and for all that they do. I think everybody has that one teacher in their life that has made a major impact. I think I have two. Miss Rapan and Miss Baton, Miss Rapan. I know so much about the Jewish culture. Thank you, Miss Rapan. So again, I want to thank all the teachers, and I want to thank my guests for coming on and being very open and sharing their stories and what's going on. So you guys stay on. And for everybody, don't forget to follow us, like us on Facebook. It's okay with Tam Tam, and just subscribe to our YouTube channel. See you guys next week.